Yeah, so good evening, everybody. I know it was a long day, but as Musa was saying, very fruitful day. So yeah, I'm really glad to be with you today in this MENA forum to discuss housing situation in these countries. Yeah, it's really interesting, and I'm really glad to be with you today. Yeah, so my presentation today is about co-designing assistance programs to families affected by conflict in MENA countries. So we know that every conflict, can I have the... Yeah, to where? Sorry, thank you. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah, so we know that every conflict situation and context is very unique in MENA countries. So the displacement, the scale, the impact, the economic, the legal status, it's totally different from country to country. Even though we know that CRS and its partners have good shelter programming throughout the global, supporting more than 300,000 people in more than 65 countries yearly. But we don't know if our solutions is the best in each context. But over decades of learnings, we learned that through working with local partners and local communities, if we design together a durable and effective programs, we may have good impact on the people. But also those programs, they should be like, it's better that implemented by the communities rather than doing it for them. In Iraq, the occupation of Islamic States and military operation in 2016 led to large scales of destruction. When the situation calmed down, over 4 million Iraqis have returned to their home after being displaced. CRS worked with the communities and the households that they returned to their area of origin where their homes were damaged, to find a best program for those people. So after several researches with those people, CRS understood that those people, they are aware about how to repair their homes. And there were markets available in those locations. So the shortage for those houses was the financial support. So CRS designed a program that enabled the households financially so they can repair their homes. So there was people contributed on the repair. So as they were doing it by themselves, they contributed from their own resources also, beside CRS's resource, to do more than what was expected. And also sometimes they invested the funding for other minor things beside what was planned for. So across 3 government, CRS and its partners, they were able to support 3,000 families with cash assistance to repair their damaged homes. CRS was one of the NGOs in Iraq that piloted cash through owner-driven repairs, and this was adapted by other NGOs, which is something good. In Gaza, the team worked on resiliency-focused approach in Gaza and West Bank. So that project included shelter repairs through self-help financial technical support, included winterization and non-food items, also included environmental solutions, including safe process for asbestos removal and solar panel. And my colleague Ahmed Dahalan tomorrow has a 5-minute slot, so can give more details about this project. But I want also to focus that this project was designed with the people and it's implemented by the people. So we see that this family, after they get support from CRS, so the lady on a wheelchair, she said that I can now use the bathroom without help. The households make me easier for me. I can now move inside the house easily, and this is much better from the past. So how we see the impact. In Lebanon, my colleagues also talked about it, and also I would like to highlight the massive explosion in August 2020 led to significant destruction across Beirut. But this was not only the issue there, because the families also faced other crises, such as COVID-19, economic crisis, and also immigration. So CRS and Habitat for Humanity, they worked with 4 local partners, and they designed a program through the community. So they piloted this participatory approach for safe shelter and settlement awareness, which was, they formed a committee from the community, from different people from the community. So that committee could help on designing a project that will help those affected people. So the project included shelter repairs, shop repairs, electrical cable management, building facade, creation of open building spaces, and also lighting on streets. So this project targeted different categories of people. It targeted the tenants, the landlords, and also the local people. So different categories of people, they benefit from this project. So this led to enhancing the social cohesion among all the groups in Burj Hammoud in Beirut. After these interventions, we learned that by working with the community and our local partners, and by co-designing affected durable programs that are implemented by affected communities, we may have great impact to those people. So our aim is to replicate these efforts for achieving greater collective impact. We know we can be doing more to include these voices to the affected people. So we would love to gain your advices and feedback on how we can move forward with this approach. So to work with the communities, to bring the communities in a design phase, and to let the community do the work to enable those affected people to address their needs. Thank you so much for paying attention.
Thank you, Wissam. Now I would like to call Dr. Nancy.
Good afternoon, everyone. It was hard enough being in the afternoon and even harder that they canceled the coffee break. I mean, really, I'm sorry. As was mentioned by Musa, I'm Nancy Barron. I'm the director and founder of the Psychosocial Services and Training Institute here in Cairo. It's a program of Terre des Hommes. It's a program that works exclusively with refugees, and we work here in Greater Cairo and on the North Coast. Our team has 205 workers who are primarily refugees, and they provide a wide range of mental health, psychosocial, community outreach, health, and protection services, which include housing. Contrary to my colleagues here and all of you in the audience, I'm not a housing specialist. Not sure why I was invited. My father, my late father, was a real estate agent. He specialized in providing fair housing for the poor. So I lived a lifetime watching the struggle of him doing this in the United States. But that doesn't make me a housing specialist, certainly not in Cairo, where I've made my home for the last 13 years. I'm a psychologist, and my rationale for starting a housing program in Cairo for refugees came from the discipline that I come from. For you and me, during a challenging time, we often long to go home. It's a long day, you're tired, you long to go home. And home for all of us is a place of safety, comfort, understanding, and love. For refugees and others who are displaced, losing one's home puts a hole in one's identity and their sense of safety. Having home taken away from you and not knowing if you'll ever return again, and accepting that you can do very little about it to get yourself safely home is emotionally devastating. In a flash, for someone who's displaced, the bed they slept in, their family photos, and their precious items are all left behind. And the home they might have lived in for generations is gone, and their key is useless. One of my favorite quotes is, "Home isn't where you're from, it's where you find light when all grows dark." Without a home, people feel lost, and refugees want that home. But the best that they can often do in displacement in a country, any country, is to have a shelter, or in Cairo, an apartment with a safe roof over their head. In the field of mental health interventions for emergency affected people, our interventions are divided into layers. At the very top of that pyramid, which is the smallest part, is a place where we say this is where are the numbers of people that actually have a severe mental illness. It's small, and they need mental health professional care. The next layer in our pyramid, which is a little bit bigger, is the layer that says someone has emotional distress and might need some kind of counseling intervention. The next bigger layer, where people are distressed, has to do with needing family and community intervention that will promote psychosocial well-being. The bottom layer is the biggest. And the bottom layer is all about protection, and it's about safety, and it's about basic needs, and about the importance of having those provided in a dignified way. Importantly, the field of mental health recognizes that protection and basic needs that are important, and without them, people have huge amounts of emotional distress. And when people have a huge amount of emotional distress, they don't need counseling. They need those basics. They need that safe roof over their head. There's nothing more distressing for a parent than not knowing how you'll feed your child and how you put that roof over their heads. So the solution for emotional distress about housing has to do with housing, which is why we started the program that we started. Over the last days, you've all made your way around Cairo. It's a wonderfully dynamic city filled with history, with something that catches your eye on every corner. But it's overwhelming, it's chaotic, and as you've all learned, it takes time and patience to cross a street. We have 289,000 refugees registered with UNHCR living mostly in Cairo. They're from 65 different countries, mostly Sudan, South Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Somalia, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. And they come here to find safety. They're not coming here for economic opportunity. They're coming here because it's not safe in their home country. And for most, Egypt will be their home for years. Less than 5% of the people who are refugees in this country are resettled into another country. Most will make Egypt their home for many, many years. Their children may be born here, the next generation. There are no camps for refugees in Egypt, and on arrival and throughout their lives and their time in Egypt, refugees are required to be self-reliant. For many, a high-rise apartment building, a metro, even steady electricity is new, and it's often difficult and frightening to make one's way around the city. We know that arriving in a camp is far easier. Most often, somebody greets you. Most often, somebody offers you a tent, food vouchers, and a system of social support. And in Egypt, however, like many other countries who allow their refugees to be part of the urban population, that's not available. Now, there are pros and cons to urban refugee life. The pro is that refugees are welcome to live here and have the freedom of movement inside the country. They have access to public health care. They have access to some public education, right? But of course, urban life has many challenges. It's difficult to find work and to maintain the expenses of daily life. Refugees must pay for their housing and basic needs, and life has become even more challenging as we have a growing inflation. Most refugees live in poor neighborhoods in high-rise apartments. They seek the emotional support of others from their own home country, especially during times of need. Refugee communities here have local associations where they try to maintain a small piece of home with social and cultural activities and offering each other support. At this time, the National Social Welfare Services or National Housing Support Services are not available to refugees. And the UN system, which is responsible for refugees, doesn't have a large amount of money. And they're able to help those who are most vulnerable due to disabilities or health conditions, maybe single mothers. But they have a limited amount of money only for those with special needs. That again means refugees here in Egypt, as well as refugees in urban centers all over the world, have to be self-reliant. So a housing program, like ours, is an effort to keep a safe roof over someone's head. Now, our housing program at PISTIC is used as a protection program. As I mentioned, life in a big city, living in a poor neighborhood has its risks, and refugees experience protection issues like unsafe buildings or having dangerous events that happen to them or becoming evicted and ending up homeless. And that's where our housing program becomes involved. Our role is to help people to live safely. Many refugees live hand to mouth, and if they're without proper housing, they have no ability to move to a new house. They can't pay for a broker. They can't pay for a security deposit, all right? So there's no way for them to move from what is unsafe to something that could be safe. So at PISTIC, we have helplines that answer phones 24 hours a day, and 24 hours a day will respond. Our housing team, you see many of them sitting here, all right? Our housing team is a group from 8 different countries who are ready to help when there's need. Again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The team is home and community based. They go to people's homes to do their assessments. They go to people's homes to offer their help. When possible, they try to fix the problems. They try to negotiate with landlords or neighbors or roommates. And if it's possible, they fix the problems. If someone has mismanaged their finance, they try to teach them about financial planning. However, when the situation is not safe and it is urgent, it's our team's job to help them to move to safety. They'll help them to find maybe immediately another refugee family who will temporarily let them live with them. And then their job is to help someone to find a new safe home. They connect with brokers, they connect with neighborhoods, and their job is to help someone to find where they can be safely living, and doing that also by paying rent, security deposits, and brokerage fees to help someone to move from a dangerous situation to a safe one. In a big city, truly, moving from one neighborhood to another can be what's mostly needed in order for someone to still feel safe. During COVID, we expanded our services more. We had donors that were offering us more money when they realized that people were losing jobs and were going to end up evicted and in protection problems because they couldn't maintain where they lived. And during that time, we were able to help people with 1 or 2 months' rent. But now, back to post-COVID, we're back to more limited funds where we have to focus only on protection. In the urban context here in Egypt, just like the urban context all over the world, we have far more people who need housing support than the money that we have to help them. Integration with national housing and social support systems would certainly be beneficial. Fortunately, over the last 35 years or so, the humanitarian field has learned the importance of mental health and psychosocial support. It's not just wash, and it's not just sanitation, and it's not just education and healthcare that are needed. People have understood the importance of integrating mental health and psychosocial support with all of those services. People like me are regularly approaching people in the housing field and encouraging all of you to recognize how safe, affordable, comfortable housing contributes to mental health. Home is where the heart is. I've been to camps all over the world where I've worked for the last 30 years, where I've seen a camp built unsafely. I've seen a camp built where the women, to go to the bathroom at night, needed to pass by the shelter offered to the single men. Clearly an unsafe design. I've seen in urban areas where a single mother might need something as simple as a good lock on her door, but doesn't have the ability to provide it, and there's no service to help with that. In each of these situations, it was housing that was causing the emotional distress. In each of these situations, it was the lack of proper support for housing. So my hope is that in speaking here today as the psychologist, not the housing expert, is that with the help of experts like yourself, that you'll understand the importance of housing for emotional well-being and the importance of housing for refugees. I hope that with your help, you'll remember that and try to include refugees inside all of the lovely national programs and supportive programs that you've been talking about today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nancy. And I can assure you that many families we've met and the local communities, families that we helped and served, they have reported that there is an improvement in their mental well-being. So having a safe home and adequate house to live in, it was reported to us in different templates or formats, whether it's through just a social chat with the family or the local communities, or whether in focus group discussions, because the habitat also measure other attributes in our housing interventions and shelter interventions and domestic violence cases, even gender mainstreaming improves when there is an adequate house or a home to live in. So I can assure you there is a lot of correlation between both. But thank you for sharing these thoughts and these facts. Now, I'm just checking, do we have Lena and Ryan online? Perfect. So we will move to Roberto for his presentation. Roberto, welcome.
Thank you, Musa. Good afternoon. So it's an honor and a privilege to speaking at this forum. I'm a kind of the outsider in the panel because I'm not from the region, I'm from Romania. But I do believe that we are facing kind of similar problems and challenges when it comes to supporting displaced populations through housing. So in the next couple of minutes, I'll be sharing with you some of our challenges, some of the lessons learned, some of what we believe can be a source of inspiration and maybe best practices from the Ukraine refugee crisis. As you all know, on 24th of February this year, Putin invaded Ukraine, and the very next day, at the border of Romania, tens of thousands of refugees already crossing. You see there a number. There were more than 1.4 million people that crossed the border in Romania. Truth be told, at that point, we did not have any experience with refugees as an organization. And as a country, actually, no one in the country faced a problem like that in the last decades. So at the same time, we knew that as a housing organization, there will be a massive need for shelter. Also on both on medium, on short-term, immediate shelter, but also on long-term, medium-term, and long-term. And in those first days, we had in mind, we started with one thing in mind, that in order to design something, the best way to do it is to listen to refugees. So we traveled at the borders immediately. We have two borders with Ukraine as a country. And after listening to refugees, it was clearly that we have to design something what the refugees say they need, not necessarily we as housing experts think they need. So after talking with hundreds of refugees, most of them were having the same two questions. The first question was, where can I sleep tonight? And the second question was, where can I charge my phone? You can imagine they were on the road for more than 2, 3, even more days, bitter cold, winter, minus temperature, snowing, and they were desperately needing a place, a warm place to sleep. And also they were desperately needing to be connected with their loved ones and to be connected so that they can plan the next steps. But before getting back to the two questions, in the whirlwind of those first days, we also designed what we called our strategic framework. This was designed actually at regional level, not only for Romania, but also for all the CEE countries that, and not only CEE countries, but all the countries that hosted refugees from Ukraine. And from the information gathered from the ground, it became evident that there will be a continuum of interventions based on these three kind of, let's say, layers. Immediate shelter for those refugees that are on the move, and we define these as refugees staying in the country for up to 15 days. And then some interim shelter solutions to build some stability for the refugees that are staying up to 3 months to 6 months. And then obviously long-term shelter, housing solutions for the refugees that decide to stay more than 6 months, more than 1 year, and eventually even for good in our country. Now, getting back to the first question that the refugees asked, they were asking not where can I sleep, but where can I sleep tonight? And we designed in the first days a whole network of emergency accommodation. Basically, there were hotel rooms, there were hotel chains. The first hotel chain that joined this program was Accor Group, Ibis Hotels, and then many other hotels joined. And then many other pensions and corporate apartments. We kind of transformed ourselves, not necessarily wanting to do this that fast, but in a matter of a couple of days, everyone was giving properties to us so that we can give those properties for free to refugees. So we kind of transformed into an Airbnb for refugees in the first months. At the peak, we were sourcing more than 80 properties per day. Basically, the whole organization, whole Habitat for Humanity Romania was working for that. And we helped a couple of thousands of refugees to have a decent place where they could sleep for a couple of nights or even a couple of weeks. Until the model was eventually picked up by other organizations, by local authorities, and also by the government, who provided some subsidies for this kind of stays. As time passed, it became abundantly clear that for the refugees who did decide to remain on the country and not transit to other countries, there is a need for medium-term shelter and long-term shelter solutions. So a hotel room was not anymore a solution for them. So we started to do kind of two separate things in terms of medium shelter and long-term shelter. The first one was the social rental program. and the second one, refurbishment of empty spaces. And I will talk about both of them in a bit. So the social rental program, which we piloted in the country, actually we took inspiration from Poland with this program, is wonderfully simple. Basically, you have landlords who owns property. This is the offer. You have refugees who needs a home. This is the request. But the simple rule of economics of offering and request, or offer and request, doesn't function here because the offer doesn't meet the request. And there are various reasons for that. On one hand, the refugees don't know exactly how to do that, how to find an apartment. And of course, they don't even have the means to do that. On the other hand, the landlords are reluctant to let their properties for various reasons: fear of not getting paid, fear of their apartment or property being vandalized or damaged, and so on and so forth. So here comes the importance of an intermediary agent, which is the social rental agency. And in this case, in this pilot, we as Habitat Romania, we played the role of this social rental agency that basically rents the property from the landlords on a longer time, minimum 1 year, guarantees payment, takes all the risk, guarantees integrity of the property, and then sublets the property to the refugees together with other services. So we piloted this model. We are now having 30 such properties in Bucharest, the capital of Romania, where the most refugees are staying, and also in another city in Iași. We helped as such more than 500 people. And I talked until now a lot about numbers. Thing is that, and Patrick mentioned that yesterday in the opening remark, behind any number is a story, is a family, is a story of hope. It may be a tragedy. This program, I visited all the families a couple of months ago. This program is immensely beneficial for the families. And as Nancy put it, is in first place, for their mental health. They find not only shelter, they find peace when they have another home, a second home where they can stay. In this picture, you see Valentina and her son. The son, when I visited them, was in online classes in Ukraine. And actually, the picture is taken just 1 day before Kherson, the city that Valentina ran away from, was annexed by Russia. And with tears in her eyes, Valentina told me that she has two big fears. The first big fear was that her family, and especially her brother, would be enrolled in the army, which was soon to be Russian army. And the plan was that they will send first, the Russian will send first to battlefield the Ukrainians. So basically brothers against brothers to fight. And the second fear was that there is no more home for her. There is no more place to return because Kherson would be, starting with the next day, part of Russia. But at the same time, Valentina was very hopeful. She said that in Bucharest, she found a second home and that she plans to remain there basically forever. Now, you know, in the meantime, Kherson was recaptured by Ukraine. So a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, so there is still hope. The second direction for medium and long term was housing for refugees, was the refurbishment of empty spaces. So in partnership with Bucharest municipalities, we kind of inventoried those spaces that are empty, that are abandoned. What buildings stay there, not used, and how can we refurbish that to transform them into shelters and social hubs for Ukrainian refugees where they can have all the services, not only shelter, but also education, mental health, support, integration, and so on. Since March until now, we've identified 3 such buildings, and we refurbished 3. We designed three collective shelters. We call them shelter and social hubs for the help of more than 2,000 Ukrainian refugees, 2,000 people. Here you have an example. This is a former dormitory building belonging to the University of Technical Construction in Bucharest. We found out in those very first day that it was a 4-story building, hasn't been used for the past 5 years. So we did a refurbishment, some incremental approaches, and you can see how it was and how it looks now, and the refugees are using the facilities now. My favorite example is this another project. It was a former office building, not in use for the past 10 years. You see how it used to how it used to look in those pictures. And we started this in September, the refurbishment, with the help of the local authorities and other partners. And last week, yes, just last week, we dedicated the first 2 floors. If it works. 2 months ago, we started the works at Edmond Building, and we have now finalized the first 2 floors. This has been transformed into a shelter and social hub for Ukrainian refugees and has a capacity of more than 100 persons per day. As you can see, families already moved here. Children started to take over the space. Parents are using all the facilities. There is a good, warm sense of home here. It goes on. Actually, we have some official visits.
Cred că asta trebuie să se întâmple într-o societate normală. Cred că administrația publică, sectorul privat și ONG-urile, societatea civilă trebuie să colaboreze și este important acest model atât pentru cei care vin din Ucraina, cât și pentru a arăta că există aceste forțe care se coagulează și care pot crea bunăstare.
Thank you. So let's have, as the mayor of Bucharest said, let's have more faith in humanity. If it were to pinpoint some key takeaways from the Ukraine refugee crisis in Romania, here will be my top 5. Fast reaction, fast response. This is number 1. And then when I'm talking about fast response, I'm talking about responding in the first 24 hours, and not only us as experts, as specialists, as organizations, but in this triangle, civil society, public authorities, private sectors. It's a huge crisis. We're talking about 1.4 million refugees here. It needs a collective support. You cannot do this alone. And the mayor of Bucharest said it very well, that it's very important that the 3 actors collaborate and do this together. Unfortunately, in Romania, the public authorities came into the crisis 3 weeks later. So the first 3 weeks, it was only the civil society, even individuals, and private sector, which provided a lot of support, funds for the civil society. And the state came later in the game. So that's a lesson learned. The second one, wherever it's possible, use of empty spaces, abandoned buildings, recycle the buildings. This is very important. Wherever that is possible, it's far better solution than doing new investments, greenfield. So at least look at this first and then starting with greenfield investments. The third one, using the potential of the rental market, and I talked already about the social rental program. This is scalable, this can be picked up by the government very easy, and in fact it was in Romania. And wherever is possible, if there is offer, then the model is very good for integration as well. And there is a lot of things we can talk about that as well. Advocate to scale up. With each other intervention that we had, we advocated to scale it up also. And the best example is with the social rental program. Basically, we had the program, it's a pilot, only 30 properties, but then we presented to the government, and the officials from the government, from the working group that we are part of, they said, you know what, this is so valuable. This is not only for Ukrainian refugees, this is also for Romanian national social housing system. So they took the model and they put it in the Romanian national housing strategy to 2023-2050 as a model to be followed by the social housing system in the country as well, not only for Ukrainian. So advocating to scale up can basically transform your intervention from a pilot to basically a national strategy. And last but not least, I use the metaphor of a pyramid here, since we are in Egypt. Housing is at the base of the pyramid, definitely. We cannot talk about integration, we cannot talk about health, education, if they don't have a safe place that they can call home. If displaced population don't have this security of a home. And I think any holistic strategy of integrating refugees should have this mantra, housing first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberto. I had the opportunity to work with Roberto and volunteers in Romania, supporting the build of homes for 4 families in Romania, which was an amazing experience. لينا مساء الخير من القاهرة إلى عمان.
مساء الخير.
شكرا على طولة بالك لينا. صوت مسموع من عنا؟
واضح، صوتي واضح إن شاء الله.
صوتك واضح
Perfect.
والشباب اللي بيشتغلوا على الفيديو والبرزنتيشنز الله يعطيهم ألف عافية، اليوم أبدعوا اليوم وامبارح، والمترجمين نحكي عربي إنجليزي بدون أي هزة.
Indeed.
كل التفكير للجميع إن شاء الله ما راح نطيل عليك، وبعرف في حفل كمان توزيع جوائز. So Lina, welcome on board. كلنا آذان صاغية.
Perfect. Thank you, Musa. Thank you, and hello to everyone. It's such a pleasure to be part of the MENA Housing Forum. I would like to present on the sustainable housing in refugee community in Jordan. As you are aware, UNHCR is primarily mandated to provide international protection and humanitarian assistance, and to seek durable solutions for refugees, forcibly displaced communities, and stateless people. So basically leaving no one behind. In Jordan, we have around 763,000 actively registered people of concern. The largest percentage of that is being of a Syrian nationality of 90%. So given the highest percentage, they are currently, there are 2 main places where the Syrian refugees are residing in, the urban and the camps. Now, due to time constraints, I will be giving a quick glimpse and overview about the Syrian refugee camps within the Jordanian context. So basically in Jordan, we have 2 refugee camps, that is the Syrian refugee camps, Zatari and Azraq. They are located, the Azraq is located around 71 kilometers away from the capital Amman, and the Zatari around 57 kilometers away from the capital. Now, Zatari is located in the Mafraq governorate, established back in 2012 since the beginning of the Syrian crisis. The population is approaching 80,000 Syrian refugees. Now, the camp area, the used camp area currently is 5.7 kilometers squares. It has, as you are seeing, 12 districts with full facilities provided to serve the refugees. Health clinics, schools, kindergartens, etc. And it's worth mentioning that the primary services are provided for free. So, and maybe you can see here, there is a linear sort of centralized market that has all of the shops that are required within the camp, as the refugees call it, the Champs-Élysées. Currently, there are 24,000 shelters, or basically caravans, distributed within these districts. Zatari camp has also one of the largest solar farms globally, with a capacity of 12.9 megawatts or 40,000 solar panels, which has the environmental impact of 23,000 megawatts of clean energy annually produced, which is equivalent to eliminating the use of 30,000 barrels of oil, which is also translating into providing clean and free hours of electricity for refugees, at least 11 hours daily for the whole year, basically. Now, in Azraq camp, it is located in the Zarqa governorate. It's established after 2 years in 2014. The population is approaching 42,000 Syrian refugees. Here we, instead of districts, we have villages, 4 villages, and remaining spaces for an emergency use, of course, God forbid. The campsite area is 17.4 kilometers squared, and the facilities here are more distributed in an decentralized manner, with the number of total shelters of 11,000 transitional shelters. The camp has also solar farm with a capacity of 5 megawatts or 15,000 solar panels, which translates into an environmental impact, a positive impact of producing 8,000 megawatts of clean energy produced annually, and which is equivalent to 1,250 car emissions for a year. Now, with regards to the refugees in the urban setting, back to this slide where I first presented these, I'm sorry, I have a sore throat. So we have the refugees distributed in different governorates across the kingdom. And to better understand the situation of how they are living or the shelter situation, we have the Vulnerability Assessment Framework Report, or the VAF report. It is biannual report. The latest version is 2021, and it's usually covering the urban setting, but in this latest version, it's also covered the camps. It's produced by UNHCR and World Bank. For this report, 31,000 refugees were randomly selected, of course, to with interviews, with proper and detailed analysis of their shelters and where they are residing. 99% of the households are composed of multiple families pooling same resources. And 34% of families have at least one family member with disability, which is significant. Now, with regards to the shelter conditions, the families living in acceptable shelter conditions have decreased by 17% since 2018 and 2021, so in between the corona pandemic. So 55% of refugee families are living in substandard shelters, which means leaking roofs, exposed wires, weak or minimal natural ventilation, or natural lighting, as well as more than half of the refugee families have no written agreement. So 18% of these families have received verbal or written threats of eviction in 2021 compared to 8% in 2018. And families with no written agreement have increased by 11% in between 2018 and 2021. So it is also worth mentioning for the wash sector that solid waste related vector diseases remain the biggest issue in sanitation system, despite the slight improvement back in 2018. Now, all of this is coming from, of course, the global pandemic, the global as well economic hardships and challenges that are happening to every one of us, but most critically to refugees. And to whomever is interested into looking into further details about the situation of the refugees within the urban setting or in the camps, this is the QR code that you can scan, that it will take you to the website. I think that's it from my side. Thank you, and back to you, Musa.
Thank you very much, Lena. Hope you will recover soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing these facts and then numbers. And as far as I remember, the Zaatari refugee, Syrian refugees camp is considered the second largest refugees camp in the world. The first one is the Dabab in Kenya. This is in terms of the population inside the camp. So it is very interesting to see these interventions happening in those refugee camps in Jordan. So thank you so much, Lena. As we go to the final presentation that will be delivered by Rayan, just a gentle reminder that you can prepare any questions you might have. So we will offer the space and time for few questions and answers after the last presentation. Rayan, are you with us?
مرحبا سامعيني جميعا.
This morning. Yes.
طيب شكرا موسى، وشكرا لكل البانلست على مشاركتهم التجارب وعلى كل المعلومات القيمة يلي عطيونا إياها. أنا تقديمي حيركز على التجربة اللبنانية. الوصول للسكن الميسر واللائق هو حق أساسي من حقوق الإنسان. عجزت الدولة اللبنانية لأكثر من نص قرن عن توفيره بالحد الأدنى المقبول لمواطنيها وللقاطنين على أراضيها. أنتجنا باستوديو أشغال عامة جدول زمني بأرجينا السياسة الإسكانية يلي اتبعتها الدولة بلبنان على مر سنين، كل المؤسسات السكنية يلي أنشأتها وكل التشريعات المرتبطة بالسكن يلي أصدرتها. هول صور يلي عم بعرضن هلأ مقتطفات من هيدا الجدول. الجدول بيفرجينا إنه تدخلات الدولة بمجال الإسكان فيها تتقسم على 3 مراحل زمنية. مش رح فوت بتفاصيلهم هلأ لضيق الوقت، بس منتستنتج منهم إنه الخيار اللي اتخذته الدولة تاريخياً كان باتجاه اعتبار السكن مجرد سلعة بدل اعتباره حاجة اجتماعية، وبالنتيجة سلمت أمر قاطني المدن والمناطق اللبنانية وحقهم بالسكن لعناية السوق العقارية. هلأ مع بداية العام 2020 انهارت منظومة المصارف، وشهد لبنان سلسلة من الانهيارات الاقتصادية والاجتماعية والصحية فاقمت من الأزمة السكنية، بالإضافة لتردي الظروف السكنية إجمالاً وتدهور البنى التحتية والخدمات الأساسية خاصة بالأحياء الشعبية. بهذا التقديم رح أعرض مدى انتهاك لبنان للحق بالسكن بالتركيز على اللاجئين واللاجئات والعمال والعاملات الأجانب، استناداً لبيانات مرصد السكن يلي هو أداة إسكان مجتمعية طورها استوديو أشغال عامة للعمل على مناصرة الحق بالسكن بلبنان عبر توثيق انتهاكات حقوق السكن ونشر المعرفة للدفاع عن هيدي الحقوق، وأنا قدمت عنه بيتش من شوي. بيانات المرصد بتأرجينا أولاً مين عم يدفع ثمن الأزمة السكنية، ثانياً كيف عم تتفاقم الإخلاقات، وثالثاً كيف عم يخترق لبنان معايير السكن اللائق يلي محددة بالمواثيق الدولية مثل القدرة على تحمل التكاليف، صلاحية للسكن، أمن الحياز القانوني وغيرها. مين عم يدفع ثمن الأزمة السكنية؟ الأرقام يلي رح أعطيها هي أرقام وثقناها بين فترة أيار 2021 وشباط 2022. إذا منطلع على التوزع الجغرافي للبلاغات منشوف إنه أعلى نسب إجت من أحياء ضمن المدن الكبرى مثل صيدا وطرابلس، وتحديداً العاصمة بيروت ومحيطها. أحياء تشكلت تاريخياً مع النزوح من الريف ومع وصول النازحين واللاجئين من جنوب لبنان ومن أرمينيا ومن فلسطين، وكذلك العمال المهاجرين، وبالتالي فهي بتحوي حالياً السكان من ذوي الدخل المحدود والطبقة العاملة من جميع الجنسيات. وحقيقة إنه النسبة الأكبر والأعلى من البلاغات عم تجي من هالمناطق هو مؤشر إنه الفئات والمناطق الأكثر تهميشاً هي يلي عم تدفع ثمن تفاقم الأزمة السكنية. أما جميع البلاغات من خارج المدن الرئيسية فأتت من مناطق انتشار اللجوء السوري، ومن ضمن تهديدات لتجمعات كاملة مثل تجمع بمنطقة البقاع حيث وصلنا بلاغ عن تهديد مالك الأرض بإخلاء سكان 20 خيمة. هون بتجدر الإشارة إلى أنه لبنان بيستضيف أكثر من 1.5 مليون لاجئ سوري بلا ما تكون عندهم أي مخيمات لجوء رسمية. إذا منطلع على جنسية المبلغين منشوف إنهم من مختلف الجنسيات، بس سجلت فئة اللاجئين العدد الأكبر من المتأثرين 44%، بيليها حاملي الجنسية اللبنانية 35%، وأخيراً العاملات والعمال المهاجرين 21%. كيف عم تتفاقم الإخلاءات؟ فترة ال9 أشهر نفسها يلي عم بعرض منها الأرقام، تلقى مرصد السكن 148 بلاغ من سكان وصلهم طلبات إخلاء، بالإضافة ل20 بلاغ من حالات تنفذ فيها فعلياً الإخلاء القسري. أكثر من نص البلاغات ترافق فيها طلب الإخلاء مع تعدي لفظي، تهديد بالعنف، إرسال أشخاص للترهيب، استخدام الدرك أو التهديد باستخدامهم، وقطع المي والكهرباء عن الشقة. هيدا الرقم منه قليل أبداً بالنسبة لبلد صغير، مع العلم إنه هو عم يجي بس من تبليغات السكان بوقت مش الكل بيعرف إنه هو فيه يبلغ. وتهديدات الإخلاء عم بتصير بشكل منتظم ومتكرر، وعم بتسبب بتدهور حياة المهمشين والمستضعفين بالمجتمع، وتحديداً اللاجئين. شوية أرقام عن كيف عم يخترق لبنان معايير السكن اللائق يلي محددة بالمواثيق الدولية. من ناحية عدم القدرة على تحمل التكاليف مثلاً، 66% من المبلغين بيشعروا بخطر فقدان مساكنهم بسبب غلاء تكلفتها. 30% منهم عم ينفقوا أكثر من ثلث دخلهم على مصاريف السكن. 30% أكثر من النص انقسموا بالتساوي بين لبنانيين ولاجئين سوريين. 34 منهم لجأوا لاعتماد أساليب غير ملائمة لتأمين كلفة السكن، مثل الاستدانة، توقف عن تأمين احتياجات أساسية أخرى مثل التعليم، طبابة والغذاء وغيرها. بالانتقال لمعيار تاني من ناحية عدم الصلاحية للسكن، تظهر الأرقام كيف بيت السكان مع اشتداد الأزمة الاقتصادية مستعدين للقبول بظروف سكنية أقل من آمنة تماشياً مع قدراتهم المادية. نسبة كبيرة من المبلغين عم يسكنوا بوحدات بتعاني من النش، وحدات مكتظة سيئة التهوية وما بيدخلها النور، وحدات غير مخصصة للسكن أصلاً أو مهددة بالانهيار. وأكترية المبلغين عن السكن بظروف غير صحية عم بيكونوا من اللاجئين. رح اكتفي بهالأرقام وهالمعيارين لضيق الوقت، وحركز بآخر جزء من التقديم على مشاريع السكنية العامة. ليش المشاريع السكنية العامة؟ لأن بعدد كبير من بلدان العالم الرعائية مشاريع الدولة السكنية هي جزء من السياسة السكنية، وإنشائها بيعتبر جزء أساسي من حل أزمة السكن للمواطنين وللقاطنين على أراضي الدولة. بلبنان جزء من هالمشاريع أنشئ اضطرارياً بالخمسينيات لإسكان مهجرين من كوارث طبيعية كحل مجتزأ ومش ضمن سياسة إسكانية شاملة. جزء آخر تخطط له بالستينيات والسبعينيات بشكل جدي أكتر، وجزء منها إجا بشكل متفرق بعد الحرب الأهلية اللبنانية. رح ركز على حي المنكوبين بطرابلس شمال لبنان يلي كان جزء من هيدي المشاريع. بعد فيضان النهر بطرابلس بال55 استملكت الدولة عقارات حطت عليها براكسات من تنك ليسكن مهجرو الفيضان فيها مؤقتاً ريثما تبني مشروع سكني وتعيد إسكانهم. بعد كم سنة قدرت الدولة تبني المشروع المؤلف من كذا مبنى، بس بسبب الأحداث الأمنية والمعارك اللي صارت بطرابلس ومحيطها ما فتحت الدولة إمكانية التقديم على السكن بالمشروع. هيدا السبب شكل أرضية ليتحول المشروع لحيز للسكن غير الرسمي، يعني اللي احتاج لمسكن تمكن للوصول لمخزون جاهز من المساكن بلا ما يضطر يستغل أي أرض خاصة أو عامة لبنائه. وبالتالي استقبل المشروع بالسنوات اللاحقة فئات فقيرة لبنانية، لاجئين سوريين وفلسطينيين. حول السكان المشروع ليستوعب عدد أكبر من الأفراد، فتم تقسيم المساكن، بناء مساكن إضافية معظمها بسقوف من تنك أو إترنيت، وأضيف الطوابق على المباني الموجودة لاستثمارها وتأجيرها للقادمين الجدد. هول الصور أمثلة كتير بسيطة عن الأوضاع السكنية بالوحدات السكنية داخل المشروع اليوم، اللي هو المفروض يكون مشروع سكني عام للدولة. أنا أعطيت هيدا المثل كرمال نفرجي إنه بالسياق المحلي اللبناني وبظل غياب الأطر الرسمية اللي بتضمن استيعاب المدن لسكانها والقادمين الجدد إليها، بيلاقي هول الأشخاص من لبنانيين فقراء، لاجئين وعمال أجانب طرق غير الرسمية لإثبات وجودهم فيها، وبعض هالطرق أوجدوها بمشاريع الدولة السكنية. إنما هيدي المشاريع تنستها الدولة بشكل كامل وما لعبت بأي وقت دورها بإدارتها وتحسين أوضاعها، وبهيك بتكون الظروف الإنشائية والسكنية المتردية الناجمة عن إهمال الدولة من الظروف السكنية الاستغلالية يلي عم تجبر سكان هيدي المشاريع على القبول بها تماشياً مع قدراتهم المادية، خاصة مع اشتداد الأزمة الاقتصادية والحروب بالمنطقة. فخيارهم بالبقاء هو بالحقيقة غياب الخيار أو التشرد والخروج من المنازل نحو المجهول. بيختار الناس سقف بيحميهم حتى لو لحين. وشكراً.
شكرا جزيلا ريان. بنفتح الباب للأسئلة، إذا في أي سؤال أو استفسار لأي من المتحدثين. وصلنا مجموعة من الأسئلة أونلاين من خلال التطبيق هوفا. وصلنا سؤال اليوم، سؤالين خلال اليومين الماضيات. ففي سؤال من صبري إبداوي، أتمنى صبري عم تسمع الإجابة كمان من المتحدثين. السؤال هو: What good practices in humanitarian and development programming to support the sustainable reintegration of IDPs returning to urban areas that are not necessarily their areas of origin. فبحب أقدم السؤال so I would like to forward the question to any of the speakers who would or might answer this. Bassam, sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for this question. So this question is very interesting question because when a displacement happens, so the displaced people will go to the new location, might be urban area or any location. So they will consume the resources, the available resources, and also there will be cultural and ethnicity differences that will affect the local people, which will be a big issue in that area. So what an organization can do is that to understand the exact situation and where are the conflict, or where is the area that they can build on. Some solution examples can be to bring the different communities together and to design together a program like what we have done in Lebanon, like a participatory approach to for safe shelter and settlement. And also the program by itself can be targeted for different groups. So the program can be targeted to the displaced people and also to the local people to improve their conditions. So an example for that also in Lebanon, like they targeted to upgrade the deteriorated houses for tenants. So both the tenant and the local people, they get benefited from the project because the house was repaired for the landlord, and also the tenant was living in a good condition. And also they repaired the shops for local people, which they were damaged. So the local people also got benefited from that. And also they did lighting in the area. They did also the renovation, the outside appearance, and also the cable management. So there were different programs in that area that all the groups they get benefited from that approach. So I think this will be a good practices to be adapted. Thank you.
Thank you, Bassam. There is another question from Pedro Moreno. So it's actually two questions. The first one, he's interested in hearing more about super adobe houses and their efficiency. And I believe he's probably referring to the presentation shared by Mr. Sadiq from the Egyptian Urban Fund. So I will work with the organizers, Pedro, maybe to connect you with the fund. Hopefully you will get or learn more about this experience. But if anyone would like to share more about this. And the second question is, it's about the ability of minorities and other excluded populations, such as IDPs, to challenge exclusionary zoning, which is most non-existent, and has allowed the policies I think there is some grammar issues. Yeah, and the third question from Miriam Kibu, she's asking about how can we promote financial support for the housing of displaced populations. So those are the questions we received online. Any comments? So I have a question, maybe the final question for the session, and it's open for all the speakers. So how can the shelter and settlement sector make advancements in supporting IDPs and refugees, ensuring access to safe homes and helping them integrate into communities?
I think that it's so important that refugees and IDP are integrated and feel welcomed. And I think that being able to bring the host community and the people who are displaced together is critical. I don't think it just happens naturally. I think that that's where all of us come in as far as trying to establish programming. When you asked before about how do we raise funds, well, I don't know that it's just about raising funds. It's about having a support with the national systems, and that the national systems in many of our countries are very overwhelmed. They have their own problems, but it's trying to figure out how refugees can be included. I imagine in an urban area, you know, in a camp, when people arrive, there's kind of a welcome committee, you know, put on your bracelet, here's the place you're going to live, here's all the different services you have. But when you come to an urban area, there's no welcome committee. I think we'd already do better is that if we had that welcome committee, is that if we found a way to have people feel welcomed, where they learn quickly about what's available, where they learn quickly about the services. One of the programs we started recently is called Neighborhood Harmony. Yeah, it's a program by which we're trying to take refugees and Egyptians who live in the same neighborhood, who live in the same building. Many of those that we've been working with in a model community are Eritrean, and coffee is a very big tradition for them. So they're drinking coffee together, they're bringing their children together, they're learning about why refugees are here. And it's a concerted effort to help the refugees and their neighbors to know each other. Once people know each other, the differences become so minor, so that a lot of what is important is attitude. All right. And I think that our programming can help with that attitude, and that doesn't cost any money. Is that going in and helping people to find neighborhood harmony, as an example, doesn't cost a thing. It's just all about helping people to know each other and changing attitudes.
Thank you, Nancy. I agree with you, and I can imagine, you know, the individual or the family, when they go through the whole journey to arrive into a safe destination, how important it would be to find a community support system, or, you know, to feel the belonging upon arrival. Thank you, Nancy. So one last question, or do we end here, Dina? Okay. We have 8 questions, to be honest. This session, we had a debate. We did extend the session from 60 minutes to 80 minutes, but we ended up having the 60 minutes. But I would like to thank you so much, the panelists, Bassam, Dr. Nancy, Roberto, Lena, and Rayan. Thank you so much. Lena, did you want to say something?
Yes, I had raised my hand, but some technical issue
can't see
happened
the
there.
hand.
Yeah, it's too small. I just wanted to add on what was mentioned. So camps are meant to be temporary, right? So the overall perspective should be a more sustainable solution. So we are looking, because we have lots of challenges within the camps and the urban settings with the greatly decreasing funds and the lack of infrastructure that would be also being utilized for the natural growth that is happening in both camps. And of course, with the lack of funds, we have the issues with the shelter maintenance that is currently being conducted, either in providing, repair or rehabilitation for those caravans, which are their lifespan is 5 to 6 years. So it's long overdue. And we are trying to provide repair, rehabilitation services, or providing new caravans for those new families, new or expanded families, etc. So there are different concepts that we are looking for to be more of a green or sustainable options. Basically, such as the social housing, basically leveraging from the human and the capital investments. So basically, the Zaatari has a population of 80,000 refugees. So if we utilize the existing facilities that are provided within the camp itself, and then use the overall facilities and link it with the neighboring social housing. For example, at least 1 kilometer radius from the camp, we would be having huge amounts of cheap as well as skilled workforce, mostly of refugees, of the nearby extractions, industrials, agrochemical manufacturing, livestock industries. So it will be leading to more of achievable solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena, and stay tuned, you and everyone, because tomorrow I believe we'll cover also some of these topics. But thank you for sharing this, and I believe we end here. Thank you for your active participation and your patience with us. Over to the organizers.